Usually when we talk about a spiritual crisis, there's this like expectation of excess.
Right, yeah, like you're doing too much.
Exactly. It's almost like a diagnostic checklist at a doctor's office. You know, you're too greedy or you're too ambitious, you're too materialistic.
Oh, for sure.
And the doctor just like taps the chart and says, well, there it is. Your desires are simply out of control. We need to put you on a spiritual diet.
Yeah, and the prescribed cure is invariably to just dial it back.
Yeah.
Restrict, suppress it all, just find a way to want less.
Right. We're always told the holy path is the path of wanting nothing. But then you step into the world of C.S. Lewis, and that entire diagnostic chart is just completely torn up and thrown out the window.
It really is. It's wild.
Yeah, so we are looking at a spiritual landscape today for our deep dive that completely inverts that premise. Because what if the fundamental problem with your spiritual life isn't that you want too much? What if the actual tragedy is that you want far, far too little?
It's such a heavy concept. And you really have to picture the setting where this idea was first unleashed.
Oh, the context is so important here.
It's crucial. It's autumn, 1941, Oxford, England. The blackout curtains are drawn super tight over the windows of the Church of St. Mary the Virgin because, the Luftwaffe is actively bombing the country.
Wow.
The world is quite literally tearing itself apart. And sitting right there in the pews is a crowd of Oxford students, young men and women who are probably just wondering if they will even survive the month.
Let alone why they are bothering to study like medieval literature or history while Europe is burning down around them.
Exactly. And C.S. Lewis steps into the pulpit to deliver a sermon called The Weight of Glory. And he doesn't offer them, just cheap platitudes about staying safe or being good little citizens.
No, he doesn't.
He delivers this staggering proposition that challenges centuries of deeply entrenched assumptions about virtue and desire and what it actually means to live a meaningful life.
And that is exactly what we are taking a massive deep dive into today. We're looking at that specific text alongside some supporting addresses he gave during that same era, things like Learning in Wartime, Membership, and The Inner Ring.
Which are all just phenomenal texts on their own.
Oh, totally. And we've also stacked up this mountain of structural syntheses and, conservative evangelical devotionals that have basically built their entire theological frameworks on these specific texts over the last 80 years.
Yeah, there's a lot of material here.
So much. But our mission here, really, the core of what we want to find out for you today is how this book or these texts inspire Christians to love Christ more deeply and live for him more fully in their daily lives.
Right. How it gets practical.
Yeah. We are tracing how a radical shift in your eternal perspective, specifically regarding like what you desire and how you view the people right in front of you, doesn't just prepare you for heaven, but completely rewire something as mundane as a Tuesday morning commute or a really frustrating staff meeting.
I love that.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because I want to start with the absolute grenade Lewis throws in the very first few paragraphs. He attacks something that almost everyone today, everyone considers to be the ultimate unquestionable good.
Unselfishness.
Yes. If you walk down the street today and ask 10 people to name the highest human virtue, I guarantee 9 of them are going to say unselfishness.
Without hesitation.
But Lewis argues that the great Christians of old would not have said unselfishness. They would have said love. And he makes this point that substituting unselfishness for love is not just some semantic update. It's a tragic, fundamental mistake.
Yeah. And if you trace that assumption back to its roots, you hit the Enlightenment. Specifically, thinkers like Immanuel Kant, and even before them, the ancient Stoics.
The Stoics are everywhere right now.
They really are. But Kant essentially argued that for an action to be truly moral, it had to be completely divorced from personal inclination or desire. Like, if you enjoy doing a good deed or if you hope to gain something from it, you've somehow tainted the whole thing.
Which perfectly explains why Stoicism is having such a massive resurgence right now, especially in secular tech culture.
Oh, yeah, the Silicon Valley bros.
Exactly. You see these tech billionaires taking ice baths, fasting for days, just, optimizing their deprivation. They elevate unselfishness and stoic endurance as the highest possible good because it's this measurable, negative ideal.
And negative is really the key word there. Unselfishness carries this inherent suggestion of going without. It focuses the mind entirely on abstinence, on your own suffering or deprivation.
Like the pain is the point.
Exactly. As if the pain of giving something up is the important thing, rather than the actual securing of good things for others. But love, on the other hand, is a positive ideal. Love passionately desires good. Love moves towards something.
Right.
The Christian framework particularly in the New Testament. I mean, it certainly mandates self-denial. Believers are told to take up their crosses, but they're never told to deny themselves as an end in itself.
It's not about being miserable just to prove you can endure misery.
No, not at all. The self-denial is always a means to an end. It's to follow Christ toward an ultimate, staggering reward. In fact, if you look at it, almost every description of the Christian life in the New Testament contains a massive appeal to desire.
See, that feels incredibly counterintuitive to modern ears, because we are so conditioned to think that earnestly hoping for a reward is, I don't know, somehow unspiritual.
Right, like it's a dirty word.
Yeah. We have this image of the truly holy person sitting in a barren room just chanting, "I want nothing, I am detached from all desire." But Lewis looks at the unblushing promises of reward in the Gospels and concludes that God doesn't find our desires too strong at all.
He finds them tragically, pathetically weak.
Yes. And he illustrates this with what is arguably one of the most devastating analogies in modern theology.
The mud pies.
The mud pies? He describes humanity as a bunch of half-hearted creatures just fooling about with drink and sex and ambition when infinite joy is offered to us. He says we are like an ignorant child who wants to go on making mud pies in a slum because he cannot imagine what is meant by the offer of a holiday at the sea.
Wow. It's such a striking image.
That image haunts you once you hear it. Making mud pies in a slum. Like you're sitting there in the alley, totally captivated by the squelch of the dirt, completely ignoring the fact that someone is standing right there handing you a first-class ticket to the Mediterranean.
Yeah, you settle for the smudge of gray mud because your imagination is too stunted to even comprehend crashing waves and a limitless horizon.
And the conservative evangelical sources we pulled for this deep dive take that exact concept and label it really plainly. They call it idolatry.
Right.
Because the problem isn't that the child loves playing. God designed the child to play. The tragedy is that the child's vision of joy is artificially restricted to the dirt right in front of them.
Yeah, so when we chase corporate climbing or fleeting entertainment or even, respectable, exhausting religious busyness at the expense of actually seeking God, we're essentially fiercely defending our right to make mud pies.
This actually reminds me of what the theologian John Piper built his entire career on.
Oh, Christian hedonism.
Yes. He coined the term Christian hedonism, and he pulled the absolute bedrock of that idea straight from this exact paragraph in Lewis.
It's all connected.
It is. Piper's premise is that God is most glorified in us when we are most satisfied in him. It means the pursuit of joy is not a sin at all. The sin is stopping short. We aren't hedonistic enough in the proper eternal sense.
Yeah, Piper basically argues that if you try to love God purely out of disinterested duty, which is Kant's ideal, right, you actually insult God.
Wait, how's that an insult?
Well, think of it this way. If a husband gives his wife a huge bouquet of flowers and says, I am giving you these solely out of my contractual marital obligation, taking absolutely no personal joy in it.
Oh my gosh.
Right. The wife isn't going to feel honored by that. She's going to be furious.
I would hope so, yeah.
But if he says, I bought these because making you smile is my greatest pleasure, then she is honored. Because the desire for the joy of the relationship glorifies the object of the relationship.
I follow the logic there, absolutely. But I do have to push back a little on the reward aspect of this.
Sure, go ahead.
Doesn't wanting a reward inevitably make the Christian life feel, I don't know, mercenary? Like, if I am behaving well or loving my neighbor just to get a cosmic paycheck at the end of the universe, that doesn't feel like love. It feels like a transaction. I'm just an employee angling for a bonus.
And that's a very common reaction.
Yeah.
Lewis actually anticipated that exact revulsion. He says we have to distinguish between a mercenary bribe and a proper natural reward.
Okay, what's the difference?
The litmus test is whether the reward has a natural, organic connection to the activity itself.
Give me a real-world parallel for that.
Okay, think about the concept of marriage. Money is not the natural reward of love. If a man marries a woman just for her vast inheritance, society rightly calls him a mercenary or, a gold digger.
Right.
Because the money is entirely foreign to the desires that ought to accompany love. However, marriage itself is the proper reward for a real lover. A man is not a mercenary for desiring to marry the woman he deeply loves.
Because the reward is just the consummation of the activity itself.
Exactly. Or look at warfare.
Yeah.
A general who fights a brutal war just to get his face on a magazine cover or to win a political title is a mercenary. But a general who fights for victory is not, because victory is the proper organic reward of battle.
Okay, that makes sense. That clarifies the distinction. The reward of heaven isn't a random bribe tacked onto the end of a virtuous life. It's the natural flowering of the relationship with God.
Right.
But, and I think a lot of people feel this, when you are in the trenches of daily life, when you are exhausted and just trying to do the right thing, it doesn't always feel like a natural flowering. Honestly, it feels like a chore.
And Lewis completely admits that. He says when you are in the middle of the struggle, the reward seems entirely disconnected from the effort. And he uses the analogy of a schoolboy learning ancient Greek grammar to explain this awkward middle phase.
Let's modernize that analogy a bit for you listening. It's like someone enrolling in a brutal 12-week coding boot camp to learn Python.
Oh, that's a perfect parallel, yes. Because when you start learning to code, you are just staring at an IDE,
Yeah.
memorizing syntax, dealing with maddening errors because you missed, like, a single parenthesis.
It's the worst.
It is. And at that moment, you see absolutely no connection between the agonizing drudgery of debugging code and the ultimate joy of architecting a beautiful, flawless piece of software.
Yeah.
In the beginning, your motivation is almost entirely external.
Yeah, you are doing it to get a better job or to escape a career you hate or just to pass the class.
So at the start of the boot camp, you really are acting like a mercenary.
You have to.
Because the true reward, that deep creative satisfaction of fluently writing software that solves complex problems, is an experience you currently lack the capacity to enjoy. You just don't know the language well enough to enjoy it yet.
That is so true.
But gradually, as you keep grinding through the syntax, something shifts. The enjoyment creeps in upon the mere drudgery. You start to see the elegance of the logic. You can't point to a specific Tuesday when it happened, but eventually you realize you want to write code for its own sake.
The power to desire the reward for its own sake becomes your preliminary reward.
Exactly.
Applying that to the spiritual disciplines changes the entire paradigm. Because when you, as a listener, decide to start praying regularly or reading scripture or choosing to bite your tongue instead of snapping at your spouse,
Which is hard.
it's so hard. It usually feels like drudgery. It feels like the heavy law of the coding syntax. You might be doing it out of a sense of duty or fear or just desperately hoping God will fix your messy life.
And the conservative devotionals based on this text emphasize that God is incredibly patient with that mercenary phase. As you persevere in those disciplines, the poetry replaces the grammar. The gospel replaces the law.
A longing transforms the obedience.
Yes. You realize you aren't working for a bribe. You are painstakingly practicing the vocabulary of language you will speak for all of eternity. Eventually, the enjoyment of God creeps in, and your anxiety that your motives are purely mercenary simply dies away.
But there is a trap here, right? And Lewis points it out brilliantly. Our coding student might get frustrated with Python and decide to learn video editing instead.
Sure.
And that's fine. Video editing is still a good skill. But for us, for humanity, if our ultimate destiny is a trans-temporal, transfinite good, meaning ultimate union with God himself, then any earthly good we fix our desires on is eventually going to let us down.
It has to.
We are going to hit a wall. Which brings us to this profound, honestly, almost melancholy concept that our deepest earthly desires are actually just misplaced homesickness.
Yeah, Lewis calls this the inconsolable secret. And it is the driving engine of all human art, romance, and ambition. It's this profound nostalgic longing inside every single human being that no natural happiness on earth can ever fully satisfy.
I think everyone listening knows exactly what that feels like. I'll give you a personal example.
Oh, please.
A few years ago, I visited the Grand Canyon for the first time. I hiked up to the rim right at sunset. And the light was doing that incredible thing where the red rock looks like it's glowing from the inside.
I've seen pictures. It's stunning.
It was objectively the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. And I felt this intense physical ache in my chest. I felt like I was on the verge of some massive spiritual awakening, like I was about to just merge with the landscape.
Wow.
But then the sun dipped below the horizon, the moment passed. And I was just standing there in the cold, feeling completely hollow. After 20 minutes of profound awe, my brain just went, well, I guess I'll go to the gift shop and buy a mug.
Right.
And I felt so guilty. I felt like I was broken because the beauty didn't sustain me.
But you weren't broken. You were experiencing the exact tragedy Lewis is describing. We look at the Grand Canyon, or we listen to a symphony, or we fall deeply in love, and we make a catastrophic error in our spiritual arithmetic.
We miscalculate entirely.
We do. We think the beauty is the thing we want. We think the landscape or the music or the romantic partner is the final destination. But Lewis warns that if we trust in those earthly things to finally satisfy that ache, they will inevitably betray us. The beauty was not in the canyon. It only came through it.
Yeah, they are just the scent of a flower we have not found, the echo of a tune we have not heard, news from a country we have never visited.
That's beautifully put. And if you mistakenly demand that your spouse, your career, or a beautiful sunset provide the ultimate satisfaction your soul craves, they become what the sources call dumb idols. They will break your heart.
Because they can't hold the weight.
Exactly. You are trying to force the finite things of earth to bear the crushing weight of divinity, and they simply aren't built for it. They buckle.
Now, I can hear a skeptic listening to this and saying, okay, sure, we all have this vague longing, this nostalgia. Psychology can probably explain it away as some evolutionary quirk.
Right.
Because just because you feel hungry doesn't mean you're going to get a sandwich. You could be starving on a life raft in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. How does this internal ache actually prove anything about the existence of heaven?
And it's a very fair philosophical pushback, and Lewis tackles it head on. He concedes the skeptic's point. He says, yes, a man's physical hunger does not prove that that specific man will get bread. He very well might starve on that life raft.
Yeah, sadly.
But, Lewis argues, surely a man's hunger does prove that he comes of a race which prepares its body by eating and inhabits a world where eatable substances exist.
Ah. So the existence of the specific hunger points to the existence of the category of food.
Precisely. A man might fall in love with a woman and not win her heart. But it would be utterly bizarre if the phenomenon of falling in love existed in a universe that was completely sexless and devoid of relationships.
That makes perfect sense.
Therefore, if we find ourselves possessing an inconsolable desire for paradise, a desire that nothing in this natural world, no matter how wonderful, can ever satisfy, the most probable explanation is that we were made for another world.
That is incredible.
The devotional sources often quote Augustine here, actually. He said, "Our hearts are restless until they find their rest in thee." The ache isn't a glitch in your psychology. It is a compass.
And what's fascinating and honestly a little terrifying is how easily that compass gets distorted by our environment. If we pull in another one of Lewis's addresses from this era, The Inner Ring, we see exactly how this plays out in society.
Oh, this is such a good text.
He talks about this permanent, exhausting desire human beings have to be on the inside.
The desire to be part of the exclusive club, the cool group, the inner circle of power or influence or intimacy.
You see it everywhere. It starts at the cafeteria tables in middle school, but it literally never stops. It's in corporate boardrooms where you're just desperate to be invited to the meeting before the meeting.
Yes, the pre-meeting.
It's in academic circles, in political factions, even in local neighborhood associations. People will compromise their morals, they will step on their friends, they will work themselves to the bone just to get inside that invisible ring.
And Lewis argues that this relentless drive for worldly inclusion, which often leads to graft and cruelty, is fundamentally a twisted, secularized version of our soul's desire to be intimately welcomed by reality itself.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the world seems full of insides, full of delightful intimacies, and we desperately want to enter them because we feel like outsiders to the universe. But the tragedy of the inner ring is that the rings are hollow.
They're a mirage.
Completely. Once you finally break into the circle you've been obsessing over, the illusion vanishes. It's just more people. It doesn't satisfy the ache. So you immediately start looking for the next, smaller, more exclusive ring to conquer.
So how do we stop the cycle? I mean, if everything on Earth is just an echo of a tune we haven't heard, and every inner ring is a mirage that leaves us empty, how do we stop feeling perpetually disappointed by our lives?
Well, the cure for that chronic disappointment requires us to properly define what is actually waiting for us. We have to look at the true biblical definition of glory. Because if we don't understand the specific glory we were created for, we will just keep seeking it in the mud pies and the corporate ladders.
But we have to acknowledge that the word glory has a terrible branding problem in the modern era.
It really does.
When a secular person today hears the biblical promises of glory, crowns, palms, people in white robes shining like the sun, it sounds completely unappealing. It sounds either wicked or ridiculous.
And Lewis admits he felt the exact same revulsion. To his modern sensibilities, glory suggested two distinct ideas. The first was fame, which seemed like a wicked, competitive, vain pursuit.
Like chasing followers on Instagram.
Right. And the second was luminosity, which seems ridiculous. Who wants to spend eternity as a giant radioactive human light bulb?
Yeah, it sounds like becoming a glowing marble statue. There's no humanity in it at all.
But when he dug past the surface imagery and returned to the scriptures and to theologians like Thomas Aquinas and John Milton, he discovered this profound redefinition. He realized that glory as fame wasn't about competitive human celebrity. It wasn't about getting millions of followers or having your name carved on a building. It was about fame with God,
Same with God.
approval,
Mm.
appreciation, acknowledgement by the creator of the universe.
It's the parable of the talents. Standing before God and hearing those specific words, "Well done, thou good and faithful servant."
Yes. Think about the staggering, almost unendurable weight of that concept. To be noticed by God, to find approval, to be a real recognized ingredient in the divine happiness, to be delighted in the way a master artist delights in his greatest masterpiece, or the way a perfect father delights in a son.
That is heavy. We spend so much of our waking lives desperately trying to be noticed. We want our boss to notice our extra hours. We want our spouse to notice we clean the kitchen. We post photos online, hoping strangers will validate our existence. It is exhausting.
It is.
And Lewis is saying that exhaustion is just a parody of our true desire.
He says to think about the purest moment of joy you've ever experienced, when you pleased someone you rightly loved and rightly feared, a good parent, a respected mentor, a demanding but brilliant teacher.
That satisfaction is completely pure, devoid of vanity.
Exactly. Now extrapolate that tiny fraction of joy to the redeemed soul standing before the burning, loving gaze of the author of all reality and receiving his ultimate approval.
But if that is the ultimate fulfillment of our existence, the sources also point out the dark inverse of this glory. And the alternative is terrifying.
The alternative is the ultimate manifestation of the inner ring. It is the terror of being erased from God's knowledge. It is hearing the words, "I never knew you. Depart from me."
Wow.
To be banished from the presence of him who is everywhere. To be finally, completely, and unspeakably ignored. That is what hell is in this framework.
This connects beautifully to a concept from R.C. Sproul that our sources bring up, the idea of coram deo.
Yes. R.C. Sproul heavily emphasized living coram deo, which translates to living before the face of God. If you truly grasp that you are living for an audience of one, it immediately cures the inner ring anxiety.
Because you stop caring about whether you are in the cool club at work or the elite social circle.
Right, because you realize the ultimate, inside the ultimate welcome you've been craving since birth is simply the heart of God. When the door you've been knocking on all your life finally opens, you are welcomed in. You are no longer a stranger.
So if true fame is the internal relational approval of God, what happens to the physical self? Because Lewis doesn't just leave us as floating minds, does he? How does he solve the human light bulb problem, the luminosity aspect of glory?
So luminosity isn't about glowing in the dark like a firefly. It is about the physical and spiritual desire to be united with beauty. Go back to your story about the Grand Canyon. You didn't just want to look at the red rocks. You felt an ache to pass into it, to bathe in it, to become part of the beauty itself.
Yeah, I wanted to receive it into myself, yes.
And Scripture promises that we ultimately will. We are summoned to pass in through nature, beyond her, into the unimaginable splendor she only fitfully reflects. And this is vital. This isn't some abstract, floaty, numb existence. The historical theologians use the Latin phrase, torrens voluptatis.
The torrent of pleasure.
Yes.
Explain the theology behind that, because torrent of pleasure sounds wildly intense for a Sunday sermon.
It is intensely physical. It's the theological premise that divine joy will literally flow into the glorified, resurrected body. Christianity does not promise a future as a numb ghost floating on a cloud playing a harp. It promises a vibrant, physical, new heavens and new earth.
So the physical body is redeemed too.
The physical body was made for the Lord. Our present earthly pleasures, eating a great meal, swimming in the ocean, physical intimacy are just faint, filter drops splashing from the fountainhead. In eternity, the whole person, body and soul, is designed to drink joy directly from the fountain of joy.
Okay, let's pivot here, because this is where the theology has to hit the pavement of real life. We have this breathtaking view of our future. We are destined for this incredible weight of glory, this intimate approval, this torrent of joy.
Right.
But how does this abstract theological future alter how I view the annoying person standing right in front of me at the grocery store today?
And this is the practical crux of the entire deep dive. Lewis brings this soaring theological vision crashing right down into your living room. He writes what is arguably his most famous passage outside of the Narnia books.
Let's hear it.
He says, "It is a serious thing to live in a society of possible gods and goddesses. To remember that the dullest and most uninteresting person you can talk to may one day be a creature which, if you saw it now, you would be strongly tempted to worship, or else a horror and a corruption such as you now meet, if at all, only in a nightmare."
There are no ordinary people. You have never talked to a mere mortal.
Nations, cultures, arts, civilization, all the things we think are so permanent. Lewis says these are mortal. Their life is to ours as the life of a gnat. But every single person you interact with is an immortal being.
Let's paint a picture of how disruptive this is. Imagine you're at work. You've spent 3 weeks building a complex financial spreadsheet. You present it in a meeting, and your coworker, let's call him Dave.
Always Dave.
Right. Dave smoothly talks over you and essentially takes credit for your work in front of the boss. Your immediate natural reaction is to view Dave as an obstacle, a jerk, a meat sack standing in the way of your career progression.
Of course.
You want to destroy him in the next email thread. How does the weight of glory framework change your interaction with Dave?
Well, if you actually believe Lewis's premise, you cannot view Dave merely as an obstacle or a jerk. You must look across the conference table and realize that Dave is an immortal soul. He is currently on a trajectory toward becoming an everlasting splendor or an immortal horror.
That completely changes the stakes.
And Lewis explicitly says, all day long we are, in some degree, helping each other to one or other of these destinations. Your response to Dave, whether it's measured grace, honest but loving confrontation, or petty revenge, is playing a role in that eternal trajectory. Next to the Blessed Sacrament itself, Dave is the holiest object presented to your senses.
Okay, I am going to push back hard on this.
Go for it.
If I actually viewed every single person I meet, including my political enemies, the guy who cut me off in traffic, and Dave the credit stealer as an immortal being of terrifying potential, I wouldn't be able to function.
You'd be overwhelmed.
I would be completely paralyzed by the pressure. Every water cooler conversation would feel like defusing a bomb. How can you live a normal life with that kind of psychological weight?
It's a vital question, and it's why Lewis chose the word weight. But the sources provide a balanced, highly practical response. Recognizing this weight is not meant to paralyze you into silence. It is meant to produce what Lewis calls a real and costly love.
A costly love.
It strips away the flippancy, the superiority, and the presumption we usually carry. It means you conduct your dealings with awe and circumspection.
But does that mean we can never just relax and have a beer with a friend? Are we supposed to be intensely solemn all the time?
Not at all. Lewis explicitly counters that fear. He says, this does not mean that we are to be perpetually solemn. We must play. But it is the joy and merriment that exists between immortals who take each other seriously.
So it changes the quality of the play.
Yes. It kills casual cruelty, it kills gossip, it kills the tendency to view people as disposable utilities. If you are a conservative evangelical applying this today, as the devotional sources point out, this exact mindset is the fuel for the Great Commission.
Because you don't view non-believers as cultural enemies to be defeated in a culture war, nor as mere projects.
Exactly. You view them as eternal souls for whom Christ died.
That dramatically reframes how we value human beings, and this ties deeply into the membership source text we looked at. Because if we aren't valuing people based on their utility, how good they are at spreadsheets, how attractive they are, how much money they make, how do we assess their value?
Well, Lewis heavily critiques our secular concept of equality here. In the worldly sense, true equality is a quantitative mathematical term. We say, I am as good as you because we are constantly measuring utility, beauty, or intelligence. But if you base human value on utility, you run into a horrific ethical wall.
Right, because if value is utility, then the sick, the elderly, the profoundly disabled, the marginalized, they mathematically lose their value in society.
Exactly. It's a dangerous path.
Huh.
But in the body of Christ, you step out of that competitive, quantitative mindset entirely. The value of a human soul isn't based on inherent worldly utility. The sources note a humbling theological truth. The inherent value of a soul, strictly in and of itself, is zero. Its infinite value comes entirely from the fact that God loves it. God placed infinite value on it through the blood of Christ. So within the church, we move into what Lewis calls complementary ministrations.
What does that mean in practice?
He says, we become taller when we bow. We become lowlier when we instruct. We are not identical, interchangeable cogs in a machine. We are unique, wildly different organs in a single living body.
Okay, so every interaction holds massive eternal weight, and my neighbor is the holiest object presented to my senses.
Yes.
But I still have to do my laundry. I still have to write budget reports. I still have to mow the lawn.
Yeah.
If I am called to this transcendent, eternal perspective, isn't it a waste of time to care about secular chores? It feels like there's a massive divide between my sacred Sunday work and my secular Monday work.
And this is the exact existential crisis Lewis addresses in his sermon Learning in Wartime. It was preached in 1939, right as World War II was breaking out.
Right, the stakes were incredibly high.
The students at Oxford were coming to him in a panic, asking, how can we justify studying medieval literature or advanced mathematics when the world is at war, people are dying, and eternal souls are at stake?
It's the exact same guilt we feel today. Like, how can I care about this marketing presentation when there is so much suffering in the world and eternity is on the line?
Lewis's answer abolishes the sacred and secular divide entirely. He argues that the Christian life is not about doing only explicitly sacred things like reading the Bible or doing missionary work and abandoning secular things.
So we don't have to all become monks.
No. Christianity doesn't replace our natural life. It exploits those natural materials for supernatural ends. Lewis writes, whether it ought to be done or not, it can certainly be done to the glory of God.
So the mundane tasks don't disappear, but the engine driving them changes.
Precisely. All natural activities can be offered up to God. If you are digging a ditch, teaching a kindergarten class, or balancing a tedious budget, you do it in blind, humble obedience to your vocation.
That's a huge shift.
The omnipresence of obedience to God in a Christian's life should be like the omnipresence of God in space. There is no essential quarrel between the spiritual life and human activities as such. You don't have to flee the office to find God. You meet God in the excellence and faithfulness of your work at the office.
That is the ultimate cure for the midlife crisis. So often, when people hit a wall of spiritual boredom or midlife apathy, they think the solution requires a radical external change. They think, I need to quit my job, buy a van, move to a monastery, or launch a massive charity.
Yeah, we always look for the dramatic exit.
But this framework suggests the solution isn't doing grander, more spiritual-looking things. The solution is doing the exact same mundane Tuesday morning tasks, but infused with an eternal perspective.
Recalibrate your desires so you want God more than the mud pies. Reframe your struggles as the syntax of a language you will eventually speak fluently. Revere the annoying people around you as immortals, and remain faithful in the daily grind.
It's profound.
Furthermore, Lewis warns against the danger of living in the future. War, disease, or any crisis threatens us with death, and we start obsessing over futurity. We stockpile anxiety. But Lewis says we must leave the future entirely in God's hands. Happy, holy work is done, moment to moment, as to the Lord. The present moment is the only time in which any duty can be done or any grace can be received.
We aren't promised tomorrow. We only have the spreadsheet in front of us right now and the immortal soul standing next to us right now.
If we pull all these threads together, the desire, the glory, the neighbors, the work, it comes down to a radical rejection of the natural self as the only passport to eternal life. Secular critics might look at this theology and see a frantic assertion of individualism because we claim the individual soul outlives the universe itself. But the paradox is that we only share Christ's victory by being in the victor.
We have to surrender the self to find the self.
Nothing that has not died will be resurrected. We don't lose our true individuality by surrendering our desires to God. We actually find it for the first time. We truly become our everlasting, divine persons only in heaven. Lewis says we are, even now, like colored bodies that only show their true colors when placed in the light. God is the light that reveals who we truly are.
So let's synthesize this incredible territory we've covered today. We started by challenging the tired idea that our desires are too strong, realizing instead that we are far too easily pleased by the shallow mud pies of this world.
Yeah.
We explored how the ache of our unmet desires, that inconsolable secret you feel when the sun sets, is actually a homing beacon pointing directly to our true home. We reframed the terrifying concept of glory not as arrogant, competitive fame, but as the intimate, loving approval of our Creator.
Which is just a beautiful shift.
And we learned that the mundane world is populated entirely by immortal souls, transforming our daily chores, our petty conflicts, and our relationships into matters of profound eternal weight.
And it is absolutely crucial for you to remember that the weight of this glory is not meant to crush you. It is meant to lift the heaviness of your daily earthly burdens by finally providing them with ultimate eternal meaning. As the Apostle Paul wrote, this slight momentary affliction is preparing for us an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison.
It changes the arithmetic of your entire life.
It really does. And so we want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you transition back into your day. Tomorrow morning, before you look at your phone, before you check your emails, before you even start your routine, ask yourself this: what if every single irritation you face, every passing conversation with a stranger, and every unfulfilled desire you experience today is actually the precise chisel God is using to carve you into a creature capable of containing His infinite joy.
Wow.
If you truly believe that, how would you live the next 24 hours?